Zionism, the origin of a power that shaped a people and broke a land. Brothers and sisters, to understand the shape of the world today, the borders, the walls, the exile, the conflict, the suffering, we have to return to the beginning. Not the mythical beginning written in scriptures, nor the political myths repeated in modern capitals, but the real historical origin of Zionism, a European nationalist movement that transformed a land thousands of miles away and reshaped the destiny of millions who never consented to its arrival. Zionism was born in late 19th century Europe, not in the Middle East. It emerged at a time when nationalism swept across the continent, turning old empires into ethnically defined states. Germans demanded Germany, Italians demanded Italy, Hungarians demanded Hungary. In the middle of these rising national identities, Jewish communities spread across Europe, often marginalized or persecuted, faced exclusion and violence. Pogroms in the Russian Empire, anti-Semitic political movements in Central Europe, and institutional discrimination convinced a group of thinkers that assimilation would never bring true safety. This was the context in which political Zionism arose. It was not a religious movement seeking spiritual return. It was a modern European nationalist project seeking a territory where a new state could be built. Early Zionist congresses even considered sites in East Africa and South America. But eventually, the movement fixed its ambitions on Palestine, invoking ancient history to legitimize a modern political plan. The land, however, was not empty. It was inhabited by a deeply rooted Palestinian Arab society with its own culture, history, and identity. The turning point came with the Balfour Declaration of 1917, when Britain, the world's most powerful empire, endorsed the creation of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. Palestinians, who constituted over 90% of the population, were not consulted. Their homeland was promised by an empire that had no moral right to give it away. Yet Zionism's rise was not powered by Jewish nationalism alone. Its greatest, largest, and most influential support base was Christian Zionism. Decades before Jewish Zionism gained political traction, millions of Christians in Britain and the United States had adopted a theology that saw Jewish return to Palestine as part of divine prophecy. By the 20th century, Christian Zionists far outnumbered Jewish Zionists, and they still do today. Tens of millions strong, they lobbied governments, funded political campaigns, donated to settlements, shaped foreign policy, built powerful grassroots movements, turned Israel into a pillar of their religious identity. This alliance between a European political ideology and a massive Christian theological movement created one of the most powerful geopolitical forces of the modern era. Meanwhile, in the 1930s, as Nazi terror spread across Europe, Jewish refugees desperately sought escape. Around 270,000 to 300,000 Jews fled Germany. Yet entry to Palestine was strictly limited, not only by British quotas, but by Zionist selection criteria. Zionist institutions prioritized the young, the healthy, the skilled, and the ideologically committed, those deemed capable of building the proposed state. Older refugees, merchants, or those without Zionist training were often rejected. Historical records show that 2/3 of German Jews who applied for immigration to Palestine were denied. Ironically, many Jews who were accepted came from safer countries, chosen not for rescue, but for their usefulness to nation building. Then came 1948. Israel calls it independence. Palestinians call it the Nakba, the catastrophe. Over 700,000 Palestinians were expelled or fled during the war. Entire villages were emptied, destroyed, or erased from maps. Homes, orchards, schools, and mosques were seized as new immigrants moved in. Refugees expected to return within days. Instead, they were barred forever. Their absence became permanent, embedded into law. Inside the new state, Palestinians who remained lived under military rule until 1966. They needed permits to move, to work, to farm their own land. Much of that land was confiscated through legal mechanisms designed to transfer it to state or settlement control. Then came 1967, when Israel occupied the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and Gaza. This occupation, now one of the longest in modern history, produced a system noted by human rights organizations, including Israeli ones. Military law for Palestinians, civil law for Jewish settlers, checkpoints, walls, and surveillance, home demolitions, land confiscation, administrative detention without trial, settlement expansion into occupied territory, a blockade trapping over 2 million people in Gaza. This structure was not accidental. It was built through policy, law, and military force, shaped by the original logic of Zionism, securing demographic dominance, establishing territorial control, and restricting Palestinian sovereignty. Throughout all this, Christian Zionism became the global engine sustaining Israel's political immunity. Its millions of followers lobbied Congress, backed presidential candidates, funded advocacy organizations, pressured foreign governments, and turned foreign policy into a religious mandate. In the United States alone, Christian Zionists constitute the largest pro-Israel political force, often eclipsing Jewish organizations in size, donations, and influence. At the same time, the Holocaust, the most horrific crime of the modern age, became deeply entangled in political messaging. Some Palestinians, dealing with generations of oppression, sometimes misused Holocaust analogies out of desperation. Israeli leaders, meanwhile, frequently invoked it to frame state policies as forms of eternal self-defense, equating criticism with existential threat. Holocaust memory became a political weapon rather than a universal warning against oppression. The result is a land shaped by forces far beyond its borders: European nationalism, British imperial strategy, Christian theology, Jewish trauma, Palestinian dispossession, occupation, geopolitics, lobbying, and the relentless machinery of power. But despite all this, the armies, the walls, the surveillance, the propaganda, the rewriting of history, something remains beyond the reach of domination. A truth carried in memory, in keys hung on refugee walls, in olive trees replanted after bulldozers pass, in children who grow up refusing to accept that their life must be defined by checkpoints and concrete. Because a system built on domination cannot last forever. It can control movement, but not meaning. It can imprison bodies, but not the future. It can raise villages, but not identity. It can bury history, but not justice. Every wall eventually meets a crack. Every occupation eventually meets resistance. Every empire eventually meets the limits of its own arrogance. The land remembers. Its people endure. Its truth refuses to die. And in the end, no political project, no matter how powerful, no matter how global, no matter how militarized or sanctified, can outlast a people who continue to rise generation after generation to claim their simple, unbreakable right to live free in the land that shaped them